Hello and welcome to the Ideal Nutrition Podcast. My name is Aidan Muir and I'm here with my co-host Torwen and Eerkens, and this is episode 223 where we're going to be doing a bit of a behind the scenes and talking about how we actually work with clients. So the starting place, I guess, would be a bit of background on Ideal Nutrition in general, because obviously I don't talk too much about it on here. So as of recording, we have 15 dietitians at the moment, and the majority, not all, but the majority are full-time with a bit of a split between seeing clients either face-to-face or online, and then also the content creation side of things. So most dietitians will have either 1 or 2 days non-client facing to do other things like content creation, and then the rest of the time is seeing clients. We work with people either online or in person. I think we're probably a split of 70% online, and the last 30% would be in person. We're obviously Brisbane-based, and we do things as a session-by-session model, pay-as-you-go, where I view it as a bit of a combination of that model and other type of package or subscription models where financially it's just pay-as-you-go for each session. The client can leave at any time. But in terms of the service we offer, I try to do a bit of a combo where it's like, yes, we do stuff in the consult, but we also do stuff outside of the consult. If we ever have any resources that somebody would benefit from, obviously we do that. If we ever want to communicate between consults, we do that. We do written check-ins and stuff like that every week. So I've personally viewed it as the best of both worlds with a bunch of that stuff as well.
I'll give a bit of a background then of what kind of clients we do work with. So at Ideal Nutrition, like Aidan said, we've got a lot of different dietitians who do have their special interests and I guess you could say specialties. But in general, we do work with a lot of people on body composition goals, weight loss, women's health, so things like PCOS, endometriosis, menopause, hypothalamic amenorrhea, athletes, endurance, but also strength, weight class sports, all of those things in between, as well as things like gut health, gastrointestinal conditions, and then also disordered eating or eating disorders.
Yeah, we work with everything, and everyone does have their sub niches. I think across the board I view it as 50-50 athletes and non-athletes. I'd say a large percentage of people who see us do exercise in some capacity is a very common thing, but it's 50-50 athletes and non-athletes. I'm personally happy to work with anybody who's willing to give it a go. Like anybody who's keen to work on their nutrition, I will almost always enjoy working with those people. In terms of who I specifically work with, it does actually fit that category I just described, where it's 50-50 athletes and non-athletes. I do lean a bit more towards strength sports like powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, weight class sports in particular I do a fair bit of. And then in terms of general public type stuff, I do a lot of weight loss stuff. I do a fair bit of IBS related stuff. And then some like medical condition things like diabetes, for example. In a previous life, many, many years ago, I used to work with a lot more complex conditions. And one of the things that probably led to that more was just simply working with an older age group. I think most people over a certain age have multiple conditions going on. A large percentage of people I work with these days are between 20 and 55 years old, and I often think they're just less likely to have heaps of complex conditions, although obviously many people do as well. So I think a lot of what I'm doing is a bit simpler than it used to be, but I enjoy it as well.
Yeah, so me then, I do work specifically with a lot more gut health clients, gastrointestinal conditions, things like CSID, MCAS, any sort of enzyme deficiencies, intolerances, that side of things. But then I also work a lot with athletes and women's health, things like that as well.
Now we'll talk about how we work with people.
Yeah, so I'm pretty keen to give you guys an insight into what an initial consult does look like. So once you've booked in with one of our dietitians, we do have an initial consult, and that tends to go for about that 45 minutes to an hour. And it's really just a bit of a deep dive into what is going on for you, what your goals are. We look at all the relevant background, medical conditions, that sort of thing, things you have previously trialed, and then also, really chat about what your goals are and why you want to work with us. And then after that session, the dietitian will send through a tailored meal plan, if that's what you've decided to do with a dietitian. And I do think that is one thing that really sets us apart from a lot of other dietetics companies. So curious to hear your thoughts on meal plans specifically, Aidan.
Yeah, for sure. I like your wording of like, what did you say if you're specifically looking for that? So I would say the vast majority of people who work with us get some form of meal plan, which I'll talk about. Everybody should get some form of structured, some form of like clear advice. So my thoughts on meal plans specifically, I start by framing this with what are criticisms that I've seen of a lot of other dietetic services. Not that I'm saying these things are common, more that I'm just being like, what are the traps that anybody else has ever fallen into and how can I avoid this? And a common thing that I've heard people say is they felt like they didn't get anything from the session, whether that is true or just perceived. Another common thing that is a criticism of meal plans specifically, let's actually list some criticisms of meal plans specifically, is they're too restrictive, they don't teach you anything, they could have a lack of variety. Any other criticisms you can think of meal plans?
Yeah, I guess the issue becomes when it becomes the only thing that the client is eating as well. So yeah, quite restrictive, or it's holding up that relationship with food.
Yeah. And let's talk about how we solve all of those things. So solving that first thing that's unrelated to meal plans for a second, I like to ensure that we're giving people something. There are many cases where I truly do believe a dietitian has given advice or whatever, and the person has perceived it as the dietitian just told me to keep doing what I'm doing. When we give some form of structure, it cannot be interpreted that way unless we've literally taken what they've said and given them back, which I don't think any of us would do. Everyone has room for improvements in some way, shape or form. I'm a big believer in some form of structure, specifically for weight loss, which I'll talk about that a bit as well. But let's talk about the flaws of the meal plan and how we kind of solve that. We can solve it's too restrictive, it's the only thing they eat and everything like that by adding some form of system to address that. It doesn't even have to be my or our system. There are many ways you can address this. My simplified version, and not even within Ideal Nutrition, we're not even all doing it this way, but how I personally do it is I just write at the bottom, stick to this plan 80 to 90% of the time. And there are flaws of going 100%. There are many things that anybody listening to this can think about, but I have one line that I go with. We've done this for almost 10 years. I've never seen anybody stick to this 100% of the time and then go on to get good results. I've never seen somebody stick to it 100% of the time for 4 weeks and then go on and get good results. I've seen people do it for 4 weeks. They just haven't got good results after, as in like they've struggled to follow it consistently. 80 to 90% works incredible. Below 80%, we no longer have those structures. We can no longer make adjustments when things when things could be improved, we can't make those adjustments because say I want to change something in the plan. If they're not already consistently on the plan, it doesn't actually change stuff consistently. The criticism of it doesn't teach you anything, I think is just a silly criticism. And the reason I think it's a silly criticism is because no individual intervention we do ever teaches people everything. Name one thing that we do that teaches people everything. If you're going to chuck that criticism out, you can use it on any aspect or any intervention. And what I think we should do is we can have structure and we can have a plan and we can teach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we can learn. Do you have other thoughts that I haven't addressed with that?
I think the big thing comes down to, like, every dietitian on our team might do meal plans slightly differently, but one thing that we definitely do is we make it valuable for that specific person. And I think that bypasses a lot of those problems there as well, where you say it's too rigid, but maybe it is very personalised. And we are considering the amount of time they have to cook things, prepare foods, their taste preferences, that sort of thing. So it is useful and it is a tool that they can really turn to and, guide them in the right direction, at least to start off with. Yeah,
and going deeper on that, for example, if I have somebody who's doing an acute weight cut for a powerlifting competition, it's one of the few times I'm like, stick to this 100%. Like it's a week, like stick to it 100% for this week, because if you don't and it moves some of these variables, maybe you don't make weight. Like we actually have to stick to this 100%. Vice versa, in a lot of cases, I will write the specific weights of foods, like I'll say 150 grams of extra lean beef or like variations. I'll give them a bunch of different options, which also solves the variety as well. But say I'm working with somebody who is cooking for a family of 4 and they just want to see progress. Like they're not trying to be like elite. They just want to see progress. And they ask the obvious question, if I'm cooking for a family of 4, does it have to come out as exactly 150 grams? I'd be like, no, like just like batch prep or whatever for the entire family, maybe have leftovers or whatever, and just portion it out so it comes relatively close, as long as there's an effort to come out relatively close. Because let's hypothetically say in this case, I'm aiming for a calorie deficit. In almost all cases, I'll be putting somebody in at least a 500 calorie deficit, if not more. I'm not saying I do super aggressive ones, but I don't do super small ones either with many people. If they consumed an extra 100 calories at dinner, they're still going to see great progress because there's enough margin for error with this type of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the big thing there comes as well from it is a foundation. We build off it as we go. Maybe you weren't seeing the rate of weight loss that you were after. You would amend that. You would say, hey, where are we going wrong? Is there something that you're not adhering to, or do we need to look at the plan again? And that's, another thing that comes from that plan. It's not just a one-off, okay, here, off you go. We build upon it.
Yeah. I think that covers all of the initial consult stuff. So we basically go through background info with everybody. We I'm very cautious with my wording here. We might do some form of education if relevant. If somebody wants it, if somebody would benefit from it, we'll go through it. The reason why I'm cautious on using that specific wording is there's actually many people I work with who not just are intelligent people. I view almost everybody I work with as an intelligent person. I think there are many people I know who have great knowledge of nutrition before coming to work with me. And it's less about education there, more about like outside perspective, guidance, accountability, and all of those kind of things as well. So we might do some education in the initial consult, and we might do education ongoing as well. But I do think the plan is the bigger aspect. So we have that kind of concept where we see them for the initial, get background, we might do some education. We go through the plan, what it'll look like. We'll send them that plan within 2 business days. I think it's really important to send it to people quickly so that they can get started straight away because motivation's highest at the start. And then what do we do after?
Yeah, so I'm going to intertwine something in here because I think this is a really important thing that when we look at review consults, why are they coming back? What is it that sets us apart? And a big part of that is being able to build rapport with our clients. So dietetics is one of those areas of practice where clients do open up often about quite heavy emotional things, and we are there for them. So it's often more than just the nutrition itself. I think the big thing there is that we do build that longer term relationship. So diet changes do take time. They're coming back to us because we can amend. We give them more information. Goals change. We adapt, that sort of thing.
I'm in a position of luxury, so I have the ability to make this choice, but I don't do one-off consults ever. The only exception, this would obviously be a rare thing, would be if somebody came to see me and then realized, oh, he's just not the person for me. And I'm like, you know what, that'll happen. That's fair enough, right? But if somebody asked in advance, hey, I just want a one-off consult, I don't do one-off consults, and I recognize that I'm in a position of luxury. But one of the reasons is because as much as I'm going to try and make the first plan perfect, there's so many things that will always be improved in the follow-up plans. And even as simple as literal simplicity, I will make the first plan simple and easy to get started on and make progress. And there are many ways I can make it better, but because there are so many ways I can make it better, if that's what I sent straight away, it's overwhelming. It's so complicated. And like somebody could like have a different take on that, but this is what I found has worked well. So this is why I do what I do. But then the other thing is, so I'm doing a structured plan that comes out as a certain amount of calories. I could get the calories right. And in many cases, I will get the calories right. But there are also times, particularly with people with higher calorie needs, where the margin for error is a bit greater in terms of like, what if somebody had really high calorie needs and I was 10% off? Suddenly it could be like 500 calories off in the first plan. And it's so easy to address that in terms of we would figure out, is their body weight dropping or not increasing if that's a goal? Are they hungry? Do they feel fatigued? We can figure it out so quickly and address that in the second, third, fourth consult. But if they only did one, I'm like, I don't think I've helped that person.
And it's so hard to give all of our opinions and expertise in a 1 hour or 45-minute consult. Like that would be impossible. And even if we switch the focus from if you're not seeing a weight loss client or someone who is focused on body composition, I'm often guiding them through food trials, reintroductions. Like it is not just a one-off process. Yeah. It takes time. And especially when it's linked to symptoms or people who come to you with things that are going on, unfortunately, it is a lot of trial and error, and that's the way that it is. We will guide you through that process and we will get there, but you've got to come back a few times.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can tell from listening, I'm a pretty ethical person, and I've kind of thought about this through a non-dietitian perspective, through like a physio perspective. Let's say I tore my ACL tomorrow and I went to see a physio. It is theoretically possible for that physio to give me the entire game plan from start to finish for the entire recovery journey and almost like algorithmically put everything in there about being like, if you have a setback here, do this. If you have a setback here, it's possible. I don't think that would be great care if that was just one session and that's what I got. You can then go the other extreme. People sometimes criticize physios for drip feeding and they only give you like the info you need for the next week. And that way you have to keep coming back. I think that's a fair criticism. From an ethical standpoint, I think there's somewhere in between those two things where it's like, maybe it's as simple as like laying out, this is what the entire journey would look like. And then also timing your information delivery of certain stuff in a way that helps people get the best results. So you're like combining simplicity, you're combining outside perspective, guidance, and all of those things throughout the entire journey. And it's neither a money grab nor just overwhelmingly complex and something that's a poorer quality of care because you can't adjust things as you go. And I bring that back to dietetics being like, that's how I view things. If we're going to go with that, like, let's say I was working with somebody with IBS. When I'm speaking to them in the initial consult, I often write down like 10 different things that I'm going to cover in future consults. But I don't want to give it all at once, not because I want to hold anything back, but because it's less likely for it actually to be actioned. Let's say hypothetically we're going to do the low FODMAP diet as one of the 10 things I've written down as potential options that we might go with. That's overwhelming by itself. And then also, what if I added all other 10 things? Maybe they don't do anything. Some people are listening could also be just individual people who are like, nah, I'll do it all. I'll do it all. But then you also have the other thing about being like, what if this one intervention just solved everything? And some of my other interventions involve purchasing supplements. There's like maybe 5, 6, 7 different supplements I'd be interested in with IBS. What if you could have just solved it with one? And the other thing is, I don't think if I gave 7 in one consult, if I just like statistically checked over 100 clients, I don't think many of them would go out and purchase all 7. But if I went through systematically in order as we progress through stuff, and we start with the highest priority stuff, the things that are most likely to move the needle most, or are also the easiest as well, and then went lower and lower and lower, the odds of a lot of these things being ticked off get so much higher.
Absolutely. And you're also building that rapport as the consults go on. And I had a question for you, Aidan, with this, because you have seen some clients for a very long time and somehow you still give them information and you're talking to them about updated findings and things like that in your consults. How have you done that? Like, how have they stayed on for so long?
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I think, so there was a neurodivergent podcast I was talking with Leah on, and I don't know if I said this, but I haven't publicly taken on clients or opened my books for, it's over a year. I don't know how much over a year, and I'm still fully booked out. I very occasionally take on a client who's just interesting to me in most cases, but if I'm booked out and I'm not taking clients, obviously they're sticking around for a long time. The reason why I came up in the neurodivergent podcast is because about 30% of my clients are neurodivergent, and that's not because I'm necessarily seeking that out or they're necessarily seeking me out. I just think some things like the outside perspective and consistency and a bunch of things are so helpful, even helpful reminders and everything like that, staying on top of things. Going deeper with outside the neurodivergent space with the other ones, athletes often have new goals. So if I'm working with athletes, it's just like we hit a goal, they set another goal, hit a goal, set another goal. Because I don't want anyone to hear this and think, my biggest concern if somebody hears that I've seen certain clients for 5 years is that it's like, oh, you tell me they just aren't hitting their goals and they're staying with you still? No, like a lot of athletes are hitting their goals and then they just set a new goal and we just go bigger and bigger and bigger. And for those people, I have a bit of a structure, and I don't know how many people are my clients who are listening to this, but I have a bit of a structure that is first 10 minutes of a consult, it's just life chat. Just talk about life. Mostly, ideally, me listening to their life, but I also have a bit of a rule in my head that's like, if they don't know anything about my life, like if they don't know my partner's name or anything like that, I haven't shared enough. So a bit of live chat. Then we do nutrition and we'll see how things are going. We'll see if there's any changes we should make. Sometimes there could be some education there, particularly if we're like talking about a new supplement or whatever, because I was talking about how they often have new goals. Sometimes they'll even like change sports and go into a different one and they'll have other things that we need to focus on. And then there's a bit of buffer time at the end to like wrap up on anything, particularly if we've got big stuff that has come up, like for example, if they are doing a competition, we want to make a comp plan or anything like that. But there's always just more on the horizon for a lot of these people.
Yeah. I want to weave into then, let's chat about our general philosophies with clients. And I'll talk about a few of mine because we do see similar but also very quite different client populations sometimes. So for me, the big thing is always being personalised, and I think that is how it should be. It needs to be feasible for them. Otherwise, they're not going to come back, especially if you have overwhelmed them in that first consult and things just aren't going to go the right way. So personalized, but then also collaborative, making sure that, you know, we're looking for progress, but it doesn't have to be perfection because we know progress, it sounds so cliche, but progress over perfection is always the way to go. And we're able to give those evidence-based information, but we do it in a practical way. That's really important to me.
Yeah. So there's a few things. I'm going to talk about the collaborative approach, and I'm going to start by, there was one thing I missed with the live chat, like why the live chat matters. It matters from a few angles. One is building rapport. Two is can kind of clue me in on some stuff about the collaborative approach for down the line as well. And then 3, imagine going to see a hairdresser or a barber and you just don't like talking to them. No matter how good they are, you're not going back. No. And I think anybody who's seen me for a long time, likes me and I like them. That's really important. I think that's a really important thing. Same thing for like if you saw a massage therapist and you didn't like talking to them, you don't go back, even if they're good. So I think that's a super, super important thing. But let's talk about the collaborative approach. This is something that I've philosophically struggled with in relation to how much prescription versus collaboration. And I think I've had a good balance for a long time, but I'm always like, how do I share this with other people? So obviously people are paying to come see us. And anybody who works in behavior change should know about the concept of motivational interviewing and be aware of this concept of if people feel like they've come up with the idea themselves, they're more likely to be motivated to take change and take action. That can sometimes mean that if you just tell people what to do, it makes them want to do it less, not more. And how do we balance that concept, which is a real concept, with providing structure and everything like that? And I'm going to use a non-nutrition example here to bring it back to nutrition. I know of a powerlifting coach who once saw a dietitian, and his criticism, I was talking about how I want to avoid these traps that people fall into, was he's like, she just kept asking me what I could do better with my nutrition. And she didn't like create a plan or anything like that. She just kept asking me what I could do. And she was obviously trying to do a combo of two things. One, motivational interviewing, and then two, a collaborative approach. But he gave this really interesting line that it's just stuck with me forever. And he said, I'm a powerlifting coach. What if a client came to me for a powerlifting competition? And instead of me coaching them, providing a plan, like providing a program and everything like that, I just kept asking, how do you think you could be a better powerlifter? And I was like, damn, I actually think that that's the balance where that coach absolutely can use motivational interviewing in so many ways. Say a client's like skipping their accessories or whatever. He could go collaborative with them and be like, one, ask why, do motivational interviewing and figure out like, why would they benefit from doing it? Like, why do they think they would benefit from it? They could come up with a collaborative approach about being like, do they reduce the volume there? Do they redistribute it? Do they change the exercises? You could work on so many things together with the client, but there should probably still be some structure there. And I view that myself where somebody's coming to see me, they're coming to pay see me. I will do a combination of creating some form of structure, giving literally my best advice. There are sometimes I will give some people some advice even with the knowledge that I don't believe they're going to do it. Small example, if somebody asks me, or if somebody's negotiating with me about getting like 5 hours of sleep versus 6 hours sleep, I'll be like, I reckon you should get A+. Like sometimes I'll give advice even though I'm like, I know they're not going to do it, but it's fine. I would rather do that than do that. But I'll go collaborative on certain stuff. Like for example, if somebody, one of the things that's made it hard for them to stick to the plan is a lack of time or that they're working heaps or whatever, absolutely, we are going to work on ways to make it easier. There are so many options there. We could be talking about meal prep. We could talk about frozen meals or whatever. We use meal prep as one example here. Some people just love it. Goes really well for them. Other people absolutely hate the thought of like even just reheating something.
Me, hate the thought.
And it's so obvious that we can do a collaborative approach there to solve the problem. I could do one of two things. And I often do either or depending on the situation where it's like I could list like 5 options and have them choose from the options. Or another line that I often use is, I have my thoughts on how we solve this, but what do you think? And the reason why I use that line is because some people will respond straight away with what they actually think. Other people will respond with a line that's some variation of, just tell me what to do, I'll do it. And I start with I have my thoughts, because if they respond with that line, I'll be like, okay, this is what we're doing. And I'll just jump in with my thing. But if they have their thoughts, around 80% of the time, I'll go with what they say. And then 10 to 20% of the time, their idea's dumb, and I'll let them know.
And that's the big thing, and I'm the same, exactly the same there. It's we give the advice, the information. We want to give the clients the overall picture of what we're trying to achieve. Then if it doesn't suit their life, or how can we make it suit their life, that's when we support them in that collaboration, making sure that we can achieve that goal that we're working towards.
Cool. So the last thing because I've got some notes in front of me, the last thing I had on my notes in front of me was things that have changed. And we spoke about this off air and I was like, do you want to do this? It's early days.
It is early days.
So I'm just going to say things that have changed for me because it is like 10 years in. And honestly, a large percentage of things that changed early in my career, more so than later. And I came into dietetics with a big belief in snowballing small changes over time. I have this belief for a lot of reasons, or had this belief for a lot of reasons. 1, it's worked for me. 2, I've seen it work for the world around me. 3, other people say it, and that makes sense. I tried this with people off the bat, and it didn't work that well. And I have a lot of thoughts as to why it didn't work that well. One of the thoughts is people are most motivated at the start. If all I give them is like one small change or something like that, we're really kind of wasting that motivation. 2, they're paying me money. There is a chance that they walk in, pay me money, and then walk out and be like, just want me to do just like 1 or 2 things. And then 3 is a little bit more physiological and far more relevant to situations like body composition manipulation. If, say, instead of providing a big structured plan, I just got somebody to make some small changes. Let's say we're specifically just like focusing on calories, for example. Let's say somebody has high-fat mince versus lean mince. We make that switch and we save some calories there. They have full cream milk versus skim milk. We save some calories there. They have chocolate after dinner. We take some calories away there. And let's say we take away 500 calories. In my head initially, I was like, okay, now they're in a 500 calorie deficit. They're going to be losing weight and getting leaner. Didn't work that way. And in hindsight, there's so many obvious reasons why it didn't work that way. One of the simplest ones is that our hunger changes based on how many calories we're consuming, how much food we're consuming. And even if it is a change that keeps the volume exactly the same, like the full cream to skim milk or the regular mince to lean mince, their calorie intake is reduced and over time their body will likely become hungrier. And I had some funny situations. The funniest to me is like one of these clients, I remember they switched from chocolate to ice cream after dinner. They're like, I stopped eating chocolate. And I was like, no. And then I was like, I'm just going to do a pendulum swing. I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm just going to like create a plan that I think is the best plan for the person in combination with individualizing it for them. And sometimes I've leaned even harder into that than you'd think, where sometimes somebody's like not cooking super frequently. They're cooking a little bit, but they're not cooking heaps. And I will still go on the threshold of what I think they'll be able to do. Like there are some people who I'll even be like, do you think it's possible for you to like cook 7 out of 7 days a week? And sometimes like, yeah, I'll give it a crack. And I do it. And they actually sometimes do it. And what I found with going in the other direction for me personally is that results just massively improved. Retention of clients massively improved as well. But then I still have the philosophy of small changes. And this leads into the topic of, if I do this and go really far in one direction, not really far, but like I do create a big structured plan or whatever, and they follow it, issues will always arise. And when I mean issues, I mean there's always ways it can be improved, whether it's convenience, whether it's just making their food taste nicer, or all of these things. And that's when I start snowballing changes from there to make the plan better and better from there.
Yeah, and I know like it's early days, but I feel like that's definitely something that I have personally worked on as well, going from the uni 3 strategies, off you go, have a good time.
That's the main one, yes.
And even going from, I guess, placements, which is a public situation where they aren't paying you for that often, and this is a whole other topic we could discuss, but they're there because they're told to be there, maybe not so much because they want to see you. We see clients who really want to see us, like they want us for our advice. So I'm the same. I prefer to give more, and we can always adapt and try and change things, but I would rather they feel like they leave that first session with the information that they wanted to get out of that session. And I always ask them exactly what are you here for? And then we can adapt and move from there. But giving that little bit extra so that they are comfortable and they are confident, because that early win, that is a big thing.
Yeah, I agree. This is the last thing that's changed. It wasn't on my list, and it's not in relation to our practice, but the last thing that's really changed is early in my career, the majority of people who came to see me weren't coming to see me. They were coming to see a dietitian. In some cases, they didn't even want to see a dietitian. It's like, oh, my doctor told me to come. And everyone who sees us now, definitely at least sees me, wants to see me. And it's so good and it's so different. And I think this is another factor in me enjoying my job still, in that I know that, one, these people would like to do stuff with their nutrition that'll help improve their performance or how they feel or their health or whatever. And they're already bought into working with me specifically on that.
Yeah, it's a pretty different relationship that you have with those clients then as well, which is really positive. Well, I think that's everything. Are you happy to wrap up today's episode there?
Yep.
If you've listened to the episode today and you think you'd like to work with one of our dietitians, please do get in touch via Instagram, or you can also book in via our website as well. As always, we do really appreciate you leaving us a review for this podcast. So if you haven't done so yet, that would be amazing. Thank you.